Hello everybody and welcome back to another God of War boss ranking. This time, rather than ranking bosses in a specific game in the series, we'll be taking a look at the top 10 best bosses overall. I've had many requests to rank all the bosses in a big list like I did with the Souls series, but I feel that with me already covering how I feel about them individually for each game, there isn't a ton left for me to say about the middle of the pack bosses. As for the worst bosses in the series, I'm sure you can guess by now that it would be a list almost entirely comprised of reskins and big enemies disguised as bosses, and I believe I've taken a large enough dump on them already. But just for you, I'll give you a tiny ranking to whet your appetite for the best. Here are the top 10 worst God of War bosses. Number 10, the Scylla from Ghost of Sparta. This inoffensive tentacle tip monstrosity is just mediocre enough to land itself here. Number 9, Typhon from God of War 2. Big Daddy Typhon is here to sit on his ass and blow you. That's about the size of it. Number 8, Dark Rider and Dark Griffin from God of War 2. There's a reason Pegasus combat was never a thing again in the series. Thanks, you two. Number 7, Manticore from God of War Ascension. You can tell me all day that this is a chimera, and you'd be right, but the wiki begs to differ about this dreadfully shitty fight. Number 6, the Piraeus Lion from Ghost of Sparta. This is a fucking Cerberus in a lion's skin. Number 5, the Mole Cerberus from God of War 2. This is a fucking Cerberus in a Cerberus skin. Number 4, Wild Cerberus from God of War 2. This is a fucking Cerberus in a Cerberus skin in a Cerberus skin. Yeah, think about that. Explosion. Number 3, Medusa from God of War, a fight where you're more in danger of turning into stone out of sheer boredom. Number 2, Gulvig from God of War 4. DeMod, you bitch, Gulvig is my waifu.
He chose poorly.
And number 1, Hephaestus from God of War 3. At least the previous 9 bosses on this list put up a fight. Now without further ado, let's stop talking hateness and start talking about greatness. Here are the top 10 best bosses in the God of War series. Number 10, Poseidon from God of War 3. The God of the Sea is a fantastic way to kick off our list. Reading the comments on the God of War 3 video, some viewers even felt that he was the best boss in the entire game. I'm not sure I'd be able to say that, but he's not far in quality from the bosses I placed higher than him on the list. He provides an exhilarating opener that does the best possible justice to the trope of opening the games with a large boss encounter. Fighting the hippocampi is simple, but it's a marvel to take in as it takes place on the back of Gaia climbing Mount Olympus. As you continue fighting Poseidon, the fight will change from you having to release the hippocampi's grip on Gaia and dodge AoE magic to brawling with Poseidon himself. And of course, the fight ends with one of the most brutal segments in any of the God of War games. It's a perfect tone setter for both God of War 3 and the start of today's list. Number 9, Magni and Modi from God of War 4. As two of the very few gods you face in the new God of War, this fight carries a lot of weight, kinda like Magni. Seriously, am I the only one who thinks there's something weirdly unproportionate about his body? Probably something to do with the massive amounts of muscle that appear to have consumed his neck. What I'm trying to say is that's my biggest complaint about this fight. In practice, it's a nearly perfect battle where you size up the duo of Kratos and Atreus against these two sons of Thor. I love battles with multiple phases that give the bosses additional attacks over the course of them, and I especially love the shielded segments that split up each phase. The battle is also paced well because while Magni is a bit slow, Modi has a bit more speed to him, and Atreus can help you have one-on-one duels by aggroing a brother away with his bow. Because of this, it never feels like you're being ganged up on unless you've made the mistake of letting it happen to you. When you put all these factors together, it's easy to see why Magni and Modi make the list. Number 8, Herlazer, God of War 4. There was a small pushback in the comments of the God of War 4 video on placing the dragon up as high as I did. I can see why. Once you understand the mechanics of the fight, it's rather simple. Forgive me, however, I get carried away by the excitement of fighting a dragon, but that's not why Herlazer finds himself on this list. Sure, it is cool in theory, and it comes at a great time in the game where there haven't been any unique bosses for a while, but the real reason I love this boss is that even though the mechanics may be straightforward, they feel fun in practice. The fight boils down to throwing the sap for explosions on Thunder Breath, blocking his slams and going into slash away, and dodging on the rare occasions he decides to take a swipe at you. As I said in my God of War 4 boss ranking though, I don't feel that simplicity necessarily means the fight is worse. In the case of Herlazer, I think its elementary design is not only intentional, but clever on the part of the developers. Frankly, it's never been easy in any game to take on a massive beast and make it easy for the player at human size to fight it in a fair manner. Crafting a fight with you and a dragon that lets it attack you from range and with melee swipes from a distance makes it so you can focus on the beast itself and not constantly be panning the camera to try and position it properly. I find it clever on the part of Santa Monica, and I believe this fight truly is one of the best in the series. Number 7, Hercules, God of War 3. I'd be remiss if I didn't include one of the best straight up brawls in the franchise. Fighting Hercules boils down to the simple pleasure of beating the piss out of your opponent. One of my favorite parts of this fight is how there's a few different progressive changes. First, Hercules' armor is destroyed over the course of you pummeling him into the spike pillars on the side of the arena. As you anger him more and more, he'll eventually destroy all the supporting enemies so you can have that toe-to-toe brawl I was going on about. Finally, you get to rip the gauntlets from the arrogant demigod and finish the fight by absolutely demolishing his face until all that's left is an unrecognizable stump. It's a next level version of stop hitting yourself by doing the deed with his own gauntlets, and that kind of cruel brutality captures the essence of what God of War 3 is all about. Number 6, Pandora's Guardian, God of War. Admittedly, when comparing bosses over the course of the series, it's difficult for bosses in the earlier games to hang with the advanced offerings of those that came much later. However, what I said with her laser rings true. If you design a fight in a simple way that is fun to experience, it can still stand against the best fights. Pandora's Guardian is exactly that. There's really nothing too complex about his moveset. Most of the fight is spent in the back of the arena dealing with only a basic handful of attacks, but each one of them requires a different type of dodging, and it's rewarding to overcome the hits and dish out damage of your own. It's especially satisfying that as you do more and more of it, the beast's armor breaks down and gives you a visual representation of your progress. After finally relieving the monster of its armor and stunning it, you get a satisfying kill that stands up with some of the better finishers across the franchise. As you can see by his ranking, the same is true for the overall quality of Pandora's Guardian. Number 5, Hades, God of War 3. I'm sure many of you will be pleased to see Hades on the list, but I'm not so sure you're going to appreciate his placement. The most civil yet common disagreement I had across all the rankings was that Hades should have taken the top spot for God of War 3. Admittedly, it was just by a hair that Zeus edged out the god of the underworld. That's because when it comes to the fight alone, you can make a great argument that Hades is superior. I love how many different attacks he has that demand varied types of dodging from the player. The different phases are incredibly creative and are refreshing not only for this individual fight, but for the series as a whole, and there's nothing that I feel you could really knock him on. The only thing that separates the two is story significance. Even then, there's a debate that Hades has a lot leading up to him. You've made a fool of the guy by escaping the underworld in practically every game, and you murdered his wife. Still, even though it's neck and neck, I stand by my own personal choice. That said, Hades is a spectacular boss and is every bit deserving of his place on this list. Number 4, Zeus, God of War 3. Speak of the devil. Really, that's an appropriate name for Zeus when you consider everything he did over the course of the games. Devil or not, it doesn't stop this fight from being one hell of a showdown. As with Hades, Zeus asks a lot from the player in terms of dodging, has multiple phases that are creative and refreshing, and other than perhaps overwhelming difficulty, I don't think there's much I could complain about. Zeus gets the nod over Hades because I feel like the fights themselves are similar in quality, but the story significance of the King of the Gods feels too powerful to ignore. He's the catalyst for nearly everything that's happened to you. He had your brother taken away due to the fear of a prophecy that a marked Spartan would bring down Olympus. He left your mother to bear a curse that she couldn't speak of said brother or she would turn into a monster which forces you to kill her. He gives you the go-ahead to kill his son and become the god of war, but refuses to hold up his end of the bargain to relieve Kratos of the memories of killing his family. And ultimately, he decides you're better off dead anyway. All of this that you've experienced alongside Kratos gives you as much motivation as the ghost of Sparta to end his reign. And when you take that in tandem with a very well-designed battle, it's a clear choice for one of the series' best. Number 3, Sigrun, Queen of the Valkyries, God of War 4. By the gods, this boss is fun. Call me a masochist, but getting pummeled by Sigrun time and time again as I dusted myself off after each death for another chance at glory was one of the most addicting experiences in recent memory. It was also one of the hardest. I cannot overemphasize how truly difficult this fight was. The only strategy I found viable was to use your runic attacks all at once in the beginning and then go back and forth between the axe and blade runics as they came off of cooldown. Of course, you still have to land them, and between all of that, you have to dodge her numerous attacks. They're quick, do insane levels of damage, and can often fuck you if you choose to do a runic attack that has you locked standing still for a few moments. As characters, the Valkyries themselves are neat parts of the mythos, and there are 8 other fantastic fights that lead you up to these council chambers, giving you a ton of adrenaline going in. Trust me, you'll need it. Sigrun is a fight that brought me to the limits of my skill, and it's a boss I won't soon forget. Number 2, Loxus and Atropos, God of War 2. I'm sure this whole time there's been a couple of you out there clamoring in your seats wondering where God of War 2's representation was on this list. While yes, it does have many bosses, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best in the series for me. As I mentioned with Pandora's Guardian, time is not kind to mechanics that feel dated. In an ironic twist, perhaps the only boss in God of War 2 that I feel is timeless are the Sisters of Fate, Loxus and Atropos. When it comes to the original God of War games, I don't think any of the other fights come remotely close to having the perfect balance of puzzle and combat mechanics that this boss offers. That's what I feel those games were all about, a solid mix of puzzle and combat, and this boss encapsulates that perfectly. You start by fighting Loxus in an all-out battle, you get a slight puzzle twist when you face Atropos and need to kill her before letting her damage the sword. You need to kill Ares in a time warp to God of War 1's conclusion, and when you fight them both together, you must damage Loxus enough so you can freeze time and ice out Atropos from the mirrors. There's an evolution from pure combat to puzzle and combat over the course of the battle, and even though it has the same feel that Hades and Zeus have in those pure combat moments, the puzzle mechanics push it over the edge for me. Plus, it's the only time that Kratos was so savage that he didn't just kill a foe, but blasted them out of existence altogether. It's a testament to this fight's wonderful design that it stood the test of time, and it's unquestionably the height of the original God of War offerings. But there's a new wave of bosses in the series that show promise to a very bright future. And the #1 best boss in the God of War series, Baldur and Freya, God of War 4. In reference to my previous sentence, I know there's a general feeling from some viewers that the God of War 4 bosses weren't up to snuff overall, and in a small regard, I'm inclined to agree with you. There were a lot of reskins, and that was disappointing, even if the initial fights were pretty well made. That said, just because a game has low points doesn't mean I can't recognize the times when it excels, and I feel that the ending fight with Baldur and Freya not only shows promise for the new God of War games that are sure to come, but it's a phenomenal battle in itself. It takes everything that I want from a boss fight in the new games and lets me act out on it in an absurdly satisfying manner. I get to go blow for blow with a god and feel every bit as powerful myself. I get to use every trick I've collected over the course of the game to give myself an edge. I'm kept on my toes by Freya, who is pushing both of us for the battle to end. And perhaps most satisfyingly, this boss is the culmination of the bond between Kratos and Atreus. You've been working this whole game to become a better father, teach your son to fend for himself, overcome his nature as a god, and learn to be better than the scum you face, and it all boils over with a moment of you and the boy working in tandem to defeat your enemy. I complimented the Sisters of Fate for being able to implement puzzle mechanics, which are a tried and true part of the series, into their fight. Well, the new God of War puts so much emphasis on the characters within, and this fight showcases every bit of their personality and adds to their growth, and even has implications for the future with Baldur's death heralding in Fimbulwinter, the sign of Ragnarok's approach. As of today, I think there's no finer boss in the series, and it gives me boundless hope for the future of the franchise. But of course, that's just my opinion. What are your favorite and least favorite God of War bosses? Tell me in the comments below. I've still got 2 more videos like this up my sleeve before we conclude the DeMod-a-Thon, so be sure to subscribe for more. And don't forget to check out my playthroughs of all the games here on YouTube as well. Join our Discord if you'd like to be more connected with our community and myself, and leave a like on the video. It makes me really happy to know you're enjoying the content. And of course, thank you all for watching. Much love to you, and I will see you in the next video.